First contact and invasion. The sky turned black at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not from clouds or an eclipse, but from thousands of massive objects blotting out the sun as they descended through our atmosphere. I was in my lab at Chen Aerospace when it happened, running simulations on a more efficient propulsion system, ironically for space travel. My name is Ilara Chen, and I was about to witness the day humanity's perception of its place in the universe changed forever. The building shook. Coffee spilled across my workstation. Emergency alerts blared through every device simultaneously. And then, silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring because you know something terrible is coming. When the first images hit the screens, no one spoke. Beijing, gone. Sydney, a smoking crater. New Delhi, engulfed in blue fire. That seemed to consume concrete as easily as it did flesh. The UN Secretary General had barely finished her emergency broadcast when her signal cut out mid-sentence. New York was next. The Voidborn, as we later named them, didn't bother with ultimatums or demands. They weren't interested in resources or territory. Their only communication came days later, a message broadcast in perfect English and every other human language simultaneously. Your species represents an evolutionary anomaly. Your elimination is necessary for cosmic stability. That was it. No negotiation. No terms of surrender. Just extermination. I wasn't a soldier. Before the invasion, my biggest battle was fighting for research grants. But when the research campus was hit and I found myself pulling colleagues from the rubble, something changed. When I salvaged what equipment I could from the ruins of my lab and joined a convoy of survivors heading for the mountains, I wasn't just running. I was planning. They can't track anything beneath 50 meters of solid rock, said Colonel Wei, the highest-ranking military officer in our makeshift bunker. He'd been analyzing attack patterns using what little data we could gather from surviving military satellites. Something about their sensors. They're blind down here. But we can't live underground forever, I argued, looking at the hundreds of civilians huddled in the repurposed mining tunnels. And we can't fight them from down here either. Fight them? A bitter laugh from someone in the crowd. Did you see what they did to our aircraft carriers? Our nuclear response? We threw everything at them and barely scratched the paint. I pulled up the schematics I'd been working on. That's because we're fighting with the wrong weapons. Look at this footage from Mumbai. The grainy video showed one of their smaller crafts, still the size of a skyscraper, hovering over the city. A desperate Indian Air Force pilot had flown, his failing jet directly into the ship's underside. The explosion barely registered, but for a split second something happened. A ripple in the ship's hull, like water disturbed by a stone. They're shields, I pointed. They're not energy barriers, like in science fiction. They're more like reactive armor. They adapt to specific energy frequencies. Dr. Lakshmi, a physicist who'd escaped the Delhi massacre, leaned forward. So, conventional explosives. They adapted to those first, I nodded. Then nuclear. But look closer. I enhanced the footage. The ship's hull hadn't just rippled. There was a momentary gap, a vulnerability. Their defenses can't maintain integrity against simultaneous multiple-frequency attacks, I explained. It's like trying to listen to 100 conversations at once. Eventually something gets through. Colonel Wei's eyes narrowed. You're saying we need to hit them with everything at once. Different weapons, different approaches. And I think I know how to coordinate it, I said, pulling out the experimental communications device I'd been developing. This uses quantum entanglement for instantaneous transmission. If we can distribute these to resistance cells worldwide, that was 6 months ago. 6 months of living underground, 6 months of scavenging technology from downed void-borne ships, of building networks, of unifying the fragmented remains of humanity into a cohesive resistance. We learned more about them with each passing day. They weren't a single entity, but a collective, what we'd call a hive mind. Each ship housed thousands of them, connected neurologically to their vessels. They'd cleansed 17 worlds before Earth. None had fought back effectively. None had humans. The Australian outback became our testing ground. The Voidborn had largely ignored it after the initial bombing of major cities. Too few humans to bother with, they thought. Underground, we built our weapons, we harvested their technology and married it to our own. Most importantly, we studied their patterns. Their clockwork, Major Okonkwo said during one strategy session. The Nigerian Special Forces officer had led a successful raid on a smaller Voidborn craft. Every attack, every patrol, it follows mathematical precision. That's their weakness, I realized. They can't comprehend chaos. Human unpredictability confuses their systems. We began implementing what we called chaos protocols, random attack times, inconsistent methods, guerrilla tactics that made no strategic sense until they did. The first major victory came when resistance fighters in the Alps managed to bring down a scout ship using an improvised EMP combined with a conventional missile strike, timed 3 seconds apart. The Voidborn. Shields couldn't adjust quickly enough. We salvaged what we could from the wreckage and discovered something invaluable: their communication technology. I wasn't just an engineer anymore. I became something between a general and a chief scientist, coordinating between resistance cells. Worldwide, we use their own quantum communication technology against them, allowing us to coordinate global strikes with perfect timing. We attacked small ships first, learning their weaknesses, adapting our strategies as they adapted their defenses. The Voidborn retaliated with increased brutality. They targeted suspected resistance locations with their terrifying glass beams, weapons that converted matter into its base elements in seconds. But for each bunker they discovered, 3 more remained hidden, plotting, preparing. I remember the night before our first coordinated global offensive. I stood in our command center, a converted nuclear fallout shelter somewhere in the Rockies, looking at the digital map of Earth dotted with resistant strongholds. So few lights against so much darkness. They think we're beaten, I told the room of haggard generals, scientists, and civilian leaders who'd found their way to our headquarters. They think we're just cleaning up the survivors now. Colonel Wei, now General Wei, nodded grimly. The Voidborn have reduced their fleet presence by 30%. They're already moving ships to their next target system. Good, I said. Let them think that. Tomorrow, we show them why that was their mistake. Operation Thunderclap began at dawn. Simultaneously, across every continent, resistance fighters emerged from hiding. But we didn't attack the Voidborn ships directly, not at first. Instead, we targeted their ground installations, the energy collectors they'd built to fuel their fleet. In the Amazon, rebels destroyed a harvesting station using repurposed Voidborn explosives. In the Sahara, a team led by Major Okonkwo infiltrated their largest solar collection array and reversed the energy flow, causing a chain reaction that disabled 3 capital ships in orbit. In Antarctica, the remaining Russian and Chinese submarines surfaced through the ice shelf to launch specially modified missiles at the Voidborn Command Center. And in orbit, our greatest gamble, 7 spacecraft cobbled together from salvaged Voidborn technology and human ingenuity, piloted by volunteer astronauts and civilian pilots, breached the atmosphere carrying our most devastating weapons, devices that combined nuclear payloads with the Voidborn's own matter conversion technology. Watched it all unfold on our command screens, heart pounding as reports flooded in. Some operations failed. We lost good people. But for every failure, 3 missions succeeded. And the Voidborn, they began to panic. That was when we knew we could win. When we saw their perfect formation break, their clockwork precision falter, when their ships began colliding as they tried to adjust to simultaneous attacks from a dozen different vectors. They never expected this, General Wei said quietly beside me. They never expected us to fight like humans. As the first day of Operation Thunderclap ended, 17 of their capital ships had been destroyed or disabled. Across the globe, resistance fighters celebrated cautiously. But I knew, we all knew, this was just the beginning. The Voidborn were wounded, but still, deadly. And now they knew. Earth wouldn't fall easily, not while humans still drew breath. The counterattack dawn broke over a changed world. Smoke from 100 battles clouded the horizon. But for the first time in 8 months, humanity had hope. Operation Thunderclap had succeeded beyond our most optimistic projections. 17. Void-borne capital ships destroyed, dozens of their smaller vessels disabled and their command structure thrown into disarray. But the price had been steep. Half our orbital strike team never returned. Major Okonkwo's unit in the Sahara had gone silent after their successful attack, and the Void-borne's retaliatory strikes had been brutal. The remains of Paris, already devastated in the initial invasion, now ceased to exist entirely. "They're adapting," I warned the War Council the next morning. "We won't catch them off guard again." Dr. Lakshmi nodded, pulling up her latest analysis. "Their shield harmonics are shifting faster now. The multi-frequency attack strategy won't work much longer." "Then we change strategies," General Wei said simply. "What else have we learned?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Keita, a climatologist who'd been analyzing atmospheric data, stepped forward. "Their ships are vulnerable to extreme temperature fluctuations," he said, displaying thermal imaging of a damaged void-borne vessel. "Look at these stress fractures along the hull. They appeared when the ship passed from the upper atmosphere into the troposphere too quickly." This observation sparked what would become our next major advantage. While the void-borne could travel through the vacuum of space, their vessels were calibrated for specific environmental conditions. Rapid changes disrupted their systems momentarily, and momentary disruptions were all we needed. Operation Tempest began 3 weeks later. Using weather modification technology originally designed to combat climate change, resistance cells created localized atmospheric disturbances around void-borne fleet concentrations. Intense heat followed by flash freezing conditions, hurricane-force winds giving way to sudden pressure drops. The void-borne ships, designed for the stable vacuum of space or consistent atmospheric conditions, began experiencing cascading system failures. In orbit, our growing fleet of hybrid vessels, human engineering combined with salvaged void-borne technology, executed hit-and-run attacks, forcing enemy ships to chase them through Earth's upper atmosphere and back into space repeatedly. Maximizing temperature stress on their hulls, I was no longer just coordinating from bunkers. As we retook territory, I moved between command centers, overseeing the integration of captured void-borne technology with our own. What we discovered amazed us. Their quantum computing systems, their matter manipulation technology, their faster-than-light communications. Each breakthrough accelerated our resistance. "They're pulling back," General Wei announced 3 months into our counteroffensive. Our global tracking system showed void-borne forces consolidating, abandoning outlying positions to strengthen their core fleet. Regrouping for a major assault. No, I realized, studying their movement patterns. They're preparing to leave. Disbelief rippled through the command center. After all this fighting, all this death, they would just leave? Not in victory, I clarified. They're cutting their losses. Look at these energy signatures. Their remaining ships are generating wormhole harmonics. It should have been cause for celebration. But strategic analysis painted a darker picture. The Void-borne weren't surrendering. They were retreating to bring reinforcements. A larger armada that would finish what they started. We had perhaps 2 weeks before they could stabilize a wormhole large enough for their capital ships. 2 weeks to prevent them from returning with an unstoppable force. Humanity's disparate military commands, which had been operating semi-independently under loose coordination, now fully unified. Russian submarine captains took orders from American generals. Chinese aerospace engineers worked alongside European weapons designers. Every resource, every mind, every weapon was focused on one objective: prevent the Void-borne escape. The plan was audacious. While their fleet consolidated over the Atlantic preparing their wormhole technology, we would strike not at their ships, but at the wormhole itself. It's possible, Dr. Lakshmi explained, pointing to her calculations. If we can disrupt the quantum field they're generating with a precisely calibrated anti-resonance wave, the wormhole won't just fail, it will collapse catastrophically. Taking their fleet with it, I finished. The technology required didn't exist yet. We had to build it, A quantum disruption device powerful enough to destabilize a wormhole. Every physicist, engineer, and technician worked around the clock. Sleep became a luxury no one could afford. I couldn't remember the last time I'd rested more than 2 hours at a stretch. 10 days later, we had a prototype. Untested, theoretical, but our only hope. The device required delivery directly into the forming wormhole aperture. A suicide mission, by any calculation. When we called for volunteers, every pilot stepped forward. The choice fell to Captain Sophia Reyes, a former commercial airline pilot who'd distinguished herself flying our hybrid fighters. Her modified craft carried our quantum disruption payload and enough conventional explosives to ensure the mission succeeded one way or another. I spoke with her the night before launch. "You don't have to do this," I said. "We can find another way." She smiled, surprisingly calm for someone facing what was almost certainly her final mission. "There is no other way, Dr. Chen. We both know that. Besides, my family was in Mexico City when they hit it. This isn't just duty, it's justice." The final assault began at midnight. While our ground-based forces launched diversionary attacks against void-borne positions worldwide, our aerospace fleet engaged their capital ships directly. Not to destroy them. We didn't have the firepower for that, but to create a corridor for Captain Reyes's approach. From our command center, now housed in a reclaimed military base in Colorado, we watched through satellite feeds and quantum-linked cameras. The space above the mid-Atlantic glowed with weapons fire. Void-borne energy beams cut through the night. Human missiles and hybrid energy weapons responded in kind. The wormhole began forming. A distortion in space, like reality itself, was being stretched thin. The void-borne fleet moved toward it in perfect formation. Approaching target vector, Captain Reyes's voice came through, remarkably steady. "Quantum disruptor is armed and ready. 30 seconds to insertion point." Her small craft, barely visible against the chaos of battle, accelerated toward the wormhole's mouth. Void-borne point defense systems tracked her, filling space with deadly energy pulses. She evaded with impossible precision, each maneuver bringing her closer to the target. 15 seconds, she reported. "Disruptor power at maximum. It's beautiful, you know. The wormhole, like looking into the heart of creation." "Stay focused, Captain," General Wei urged, but his voice caught. We all felt it. The weight of this moment, the courage of this woman. 5 seconds. Tell everyone I saw the future. And it belongs to humans." Her signal terminated as her ship entered the wormhole aperture. For 3 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the sky exploded. The wormhole didn't just collapse, it inverted, creating a brief but catastrophic gravitational anomaly. The void-borne ships nearest the aperture were torn apart instantly. Those further out were dragged toward the implosion point, colliding with one another in their desperate attempt to escape. Energy cascades rippled through their fleet as ship after ship lost containment. When it was over, when the light faded and our sensors could function again, we counted. Of the nearly 9,000 ships that had comprised the void-borne invasion force, only 17 managed to escape the collapse. 17 damaged vessels limping away from Earth at maximum speed. The command center erupted in emotions. Cheers, tears, exhausted collapse. General Wei placed a hand on my shoulder, his weathered face showing the first smile I'd seen in months. "They'll be back," I said quietly, unwilling to surrender completely to the moment. "The 17 that escaped will report back." "Let them," he replied. "Let them tell their empire about Earth, about humans. Let them spread the word to every corner of the galaxy." He gestured to the screens showing the debris field that had been the void-borne fleet. "Let them tell everyone what happens when you underestimate humanity." In the months that followed, Earth began to rebuild, but not just to restore what was lost, to prepare. The technology we'd salvaged, the knowledge we'd gained, accelerated our development by centuries. Quantum computing, matter conversion, faster than light communications, the beginnings of our own interstellar propulsion. 1 year after the invasion, I stood with the Unified Earth Defense Council as we christened our first true starship, built From the ground up with human innovation, enhanced by what we'd learned from our would-be conquerors. Its name was painted proudly on the hull, UESS Sophia Reyes. As it rose from its launch cradle, breaking free of Earth's gravity with effortless power, I thought about how the Voidborn had called us an evolutionary anomaly. They'd meant it as an aberration, something to be corrected. They were right about one thing: humans are an anomaly. We are chaos and creativity, violence and compassion, division and unity. We fight among ourselves right until the moment we need to stand together. The Voidborn came to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They sent 9,900 ships to subjugate us. Only 17 made it back alive, and now we're coming for them.